Hi everyone, Janelle here. I'm a functional nutritionist and doctor of natural medicine. This is my podcast where we talk about midlife wellness in the mountains. Today I'm joined by Bree Argetsinger, who is better known as Betty Rocker. Bree is a fitness and movement expert who designed Betty Rocker to help women use movement to reach their health and fitness goals. She has a new program specific to perimenopausal women that I am absolutely stoked about. Today, we talk about how hormone changes in midlife impact our muscles and how what we used to do for fitness might not work the same at midlife. Muscles are important for strength, but they're also important parts of our metabolic health, bone health, brain health, and more. Bree shares the 4 things she recommends all midlife women incorporate to build muscle and optimize health. Welcome, everyone, and welcome, Bree. I am super happy to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a total pleasure to get to spend some time with you.
Awesome. So, you don't know this, but we have been besties for about 7 years now. That's when I started working out with you, and you have been a family name since then because I always say to my kids, "I'm gonna go work out with my friend Betty," and I
Aw.
go upstairs to work out with you, so my kids and my husband know you well. But yeah, so seriously though, you're a total badass. And at the same time, you are kind and accepting and not a perfectionist at all. So I love that. And you have this amazing ability to push people, but also to invite them to do it with grace and acceptance. And you're super down to earth. So I love all of that about you. But I brought you here today to get some of your wisdom around midlife health through a muscle perspective. So, so yeah. So with that, I am a recovering cardio junkie. And I work with a lot of super fit, cardio intensive mountain athletes.
Mhm.
And I have found for a lot of us, things change at midlife. I mean, so much changes, but movement wise, what used to work isn't working the same way anymore. And so I'm wondering, have you noticed this with the people you work with, or do you have a personal experience with this?
Yes, and first I wanna go back to your incredible introduction, which I suddenly teared up. Thank you so much for that. That was just really meaningful. And of course, words of affirmation are one of my love languages. So you
Ah,
totally just hit that all on the head. Thank you so much. And thank you for the work that you're doing for women and helping women, especially in this very unique niche that you are in. It's very specific. And I think we all need a voice, someone who's kind of going on the journey with us, and you and I were talking just before we started this episode that we're both 47 and we're both in that life stage where, we've both been practicing fitness for a long time, and yet we're hitting this time in our lives when things start to change and we're noticing it. And you know, aging can seem like this big bad thing, right? But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. It really is something that we can embrace, I think, when we are practicing consistent, healthy practices that are holistic and aren't just about our exercise and aren't just about like maybe like our nutrition even, that go beyond that. And that's really a big part of what gets me excited about the aging process, thinking about like what I'm doing now and how that's going to set me up for the next decade of my life. And even like how I am right now, how many of the things I did in, say, my 30s are playing out right now. Because I did a lot of things really poorly in my 20s, which played out in my 30s. I had to reap the consequences of that behavior in my 30s, which really inspired me to start to take my health more seriously, to start to see things more holistically, to really care about that. And in caring about that, that's when I realized how much I cared about helping other women as well. And that was when I created the Betty Rocker brand as well. And I see that all of those deposits that I made over the last decade and a half have played out in this time in my life where I'm almost 50. And I anticipate everything I've been doing now will play out over that next decade to come. So when we talk about this stuff in midlife together, and to all of the listeners, I want you to know that everything you do is beneficial. It's you so kindly said I'm not about perfection. It's true. I have this all or something mentality. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces that has given me this staying power, this ability to be consistent, is that I don't make it about perfection. And that keeps me going. Because if I made it like all or nothing all the time, I would be like burned out, right? You said you were a cardio junkie. I mean, tell me more about that. Like, how did that work out for you?
Before I answer your question, I love that you said that what you're doing today is impacting your health down the line, because I think, especially when we're talking about muscles, I think so many people focus on the immediate benefits, which of course are amazing and incredible, and we can talk about that. But then there are these long term benefits. So, what you do now really is, I mean, especially with all the new science about brain health and Alzheimer's and all of these things, that all of these things that we're doing now, I mean, when we're 20, we're so resilient.
Yeah,
Thank God, because I am with you. I just kind of crushed my body in every way imaginable,
right.
and we're able to bounce back, but we kind of lose that ability, that resilience, that natural resilience as we get older and our hormones change and all of that. You also said, what I loved is everything we do matters, and that's such a huge principle of functional medicine and functional nutrition, that all the different, we have so many tools, and it's not in an overwhelming way, it's like in this awesome way that's like, oh my gosh, we have sleep, we have movement, we have food, like we have all of these great things. And
Yes.
then people get so frozen with this perfectionism. And so I really love, I mean, you are always saying that, flossom. I mean, that's your thing. Be
Yes.
flossom. So I love that. And if anyone doesn't
Yeah.
know that you say that, you're gonna love it when you find Bree's classes. But she's all about just showing up, just doing what you can
Yep.
and not doing it perfect. And I think that is so inviting and just a wonderful way to approach things, and really make a difference in people's lives. So
Yeah,
thank you
we
for all
need
of
that.
that.
We
We
need
need
that.
that. We need that.
We need
So my cardio, I was that diehard run every day. Get
Mhm.
that 60 minutes in, do that long mountain run, go, go,
Right.
go, push, push, push. And then I totally started getting the midsection and started having all these little symptoms of dysfunctional metabolism. And that was directly because of my hormones changing in perimenopause. And so I had to take a hard look at what I was doing. And thankfully, I had your classes. That's totally what I've used. And I've understood the science. And so I love when people understand the science. It really gives us the why. I know you're into that. So anyway, that's my cardio
Well,
story.
that's
What do
that's
you see?
so I know, I really appreciate you sharing that because that's such a common experience. And you touched on earlier how when we're a little bit younger and we have higher levels of hormones, we have a little bit more resilience. We have more bounce back, right? To our training. We're able to mitigate that inflammatory response a little bit better than we can as our hormones start to drop. And we have to remember that estrogen is a very anabolic hormone, right? So, and in perimenopause, slowly we start to produce less of these hormones, our estrogen and our progesterone primarily, although testosterone also plays a big role. And if we think about, most of our sex hormones are made in our ovaries, so as our period starts to change and slow down, we are making less of these hormones, and this impacts us in so many ways that we don't realize. I mean, even the downturn in our progesterone, I mean, progesterone buffers our cortisol. And so our stress response gets even more exacerbated as we enter into perimenopause. And that's one of those things that you don't even realize is what's happening. You just feel like you have like this extended PMS situation going on, right? Like that's how we feel. We don't attribute it to perimenopause. I feel like perimenopause just in the last couple of years has become this big awareness women have. Thanks to the work of people like Dr. Stacy Sims and all of us who are talking about this openly finally. It's really, really important. But our estrogen is a very anabolic hormone. So this is why in like the first half of your cycle, you have more drive, you have more power, you've got higher levels of estrogen. And notably that E2, that estradiol, that E2 estrogen, so there's three types of estrogen. And so when we have higher levels of that, we have more ability for our body to preserve and rebuild our muscle tissue. And as we lose that estrogen over time, This is where we end up struggling to recover as easily in our workouts. And so if we are doing a lot of cardio all the time, we don't have the ability to reduce the inflammatory response that's created from a workout effectively enough to rebuild the tissue afterwards. And too much cardio, because we're losing some of that buffer for our cortisol, we're also having like that kind of an impact where we're getting like that excess cortisol, which is going to contribute to more fat storage and also to less muscle. It's actually going to break down our muscle. So there's all of these things hitting us. And in our 40s, we're not absorbing the amino acids from our protein as easily. And a lot of women are already not eating enough protein to start with. And so you take that and then you take away some of the aminos that they need for muscle tissue repair. And suddenly we've got this whole recipe for fat gain, right? For muscle loss. And it just starts to slowly cascade and not in our favor over time. So the more you know, the better you can do. And one of the things obviously that you can do is start to think about, being more strategic with your training more for, like you said earlier, thinking about your muscular strength as opposed to just fat loss alone. And that is going to help you become a more efficient fat burner. It's going to make sure that your hormone levels stay more balanced. And we're not just talking about your estrogen, progesterone here. We're talking about things like cortisol, insulin, your thyroid as well. Big impact from overtraining and stuff like that. It's a master regulator. So just thinking about all of these kind of things together, if we think about having a better, more strategic training schedule where we're maybe more thinking about polarizing our training, where we're going harder on the days that we train, and then we're recovering more fully after we train. And this was always important. This training and recovery was always an important aspect of our overall fitness, but we got away with a little bit more when we had higher levels of hormones. We can't get away with it as easily in perimenopause, and it becomes even more pronounced postmenopause after we stop having our period. So that's just the first sort of level of this, is that polarization of the training structure. And then we can get a little bit more specific about, resistance training and starting to really ramp up like the strength aspect of our training and adding in the explosive cardio. And if we do still enjoy the long, slow distance type of cardiovascular activity, it has a place. We just need to start to maybe shift how we utilize it, thinking about our joints, because we're losing some collagen and elastin. We need to be a little bit more proactive about our self-care and stretching, because our joints need support. Our muscle tissue needs to be supported more proactively, right? It's not as supple as it once was, but we can just be more, proactive with stretching and self-care and mobility work to really give it that support. And we're thinking about our protein intake a little bit more carefully. We're thinking about our gut health. We're thinking about supporting our body processes our estrogen through the gut. And if we're not having nourishing foods that support the microbiome and that specialized section called the estrobolome that helps to, move excess estrogen out of the body, we're going to end up with even more pronounced imbalanced hormones. So I want to give you a chance to ask questions because I'm talking about a ton of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we had all week to talk about this, because this is exactly there's just so much that's connected.
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
it's everything matters, and that's, again, not overwhelming. It's like there's so much we can do to improve how we feel today and how
yes,
we age. And what I love about muscles is that I think people don't understand how muscles are such a huge part of our metabolism.
yes,
And our metabolism in midlife is like two sides of a coin, where, I mean, just all the things that you're saying is just kind of reminding me of this. And my brain loves to sort of organize things. And I love that idea that it's two sides of a coin. And like on one side, we have all of our hormones changing, which is going to happen. Like we can't avoid that. It's a natural process. But on one side, we have all of those hormones changing our metabolism. And on the other side of the coin, we have if we have any metabolic dysfunction, our symptoms are going to be like it's like the most upstream thing in our symptoms. Like if we have any metabolic dysfunction, we're going to feel like crap. All of our symptoms are going to be worse. And I don't think people understand what symptoms relate to a dysfunctioning metabolism and how much muscle is important for that. And like you said, it touches on stress and cortisol. It touches on our thyroid. It touches on our sleep, our brain, our mood, our energy, our fatigue, our bonking at 3 p.m. These are all related to muscle. Muscle is just like a way to weave all of those things to improve all of those things. So I think people don't understand that it's again not just about muscles, it's not about, just changing cardio to more strength and all those different factors that I want to talk to you about those different components of working out in midlife. But it's just so cool. I know we both just feel so passionately about how it's all connected and there's so much that we can do to directly change how we feel today and moving forward. So that was just like my excitement about that. You just said so many really important things. So, can you tell us before we jump into like kind of your specific recommendations about perimenopause and all that, about like what are generally speaking the benefits of having muscle and then the benefits of having muscle in midlife when our hormones are changing?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something that I wish was more stressed for us as women. Just thinking about how, I mean, you look at me and you're like, well, you don't look like a bodybuilder, right? Like you look like an average fit woman, right? But I can give you a flex,
Yeah,
right? But like
girl.
we all have different goals, right? Like, so we have to take that into consideration when we're looking at different people and their recommendations. Like just to, I mean, my goal is to just be strong and capable as I go through life. Like I never have wanted to be in a competition or have like a competition type of approach. This is also another valid type of approach, right? So if you are training for a competition, you're obviously going to be building a lot of muscle. I'm training for my life. And so I'm not loading my joints as heavily as I would be if I was trying to put on a ton more muscle. So there are a lot of different levels of muscle that are just fine. And but muscle, skeletal muscle is what we all have, whether you're at this bodybuilder level, whether you're at the weekend warrior level, whether you're at like the fitness instructor level, we all have muscle. We all have skeletal muscle. And skeletal muscle, we don't want to lose it from the metabolic perspective, because I want you to understand it's not just about like fat loss alone. It's also about your autonomy and capability as you age and go through time. This is why you want to care about your muscle tissue. You also like, the more muscle you carry, the more calories you're going to burn at rest, because muscle is the most metabolically active tissue that we have, right? And you think about how we actually burn calories or burn energy throughout the day. More like 70% of our burn, our total daily burn, just comes from existing, just from being alive, from like if you were just laying in bed all day, that's 70% of your calorie burn is going to come from just that, from your heart beating, from your body digesting food, all of that stuff. And you can have that be greater or lesser depending on how much muscle you're just carrying. Just that alone is going to increase that resting metabolic rate of your body. So the more muscle you have, the more calories you will burn at rest. And I think it's really important to understand the rest of what makes up the equation of how do we get to 100% of our calorie burn throughout the day, right? We've got things like the thermic effect of food, which as we eat our food and digest our food throughout the day and absorb the nutrients, that accounts for up to 10%. You can impact how much of that you burn by eating more protein. Just that alone will help increase your calorie burn. Then only about 5% of your overall daily calorie burn comes from your workout. And people put all this emphasis and pressure on these crazy workouts because they think that if they think calories in, calories out is what's going to make the difference in their seeing their body change, and that it's coming from a workout and that they need to severely restrict their calories. But really only about 5% of your total daily energy expenditure is coming from your food or from your workout, right? And so the other percentage up to like 15% is going to come from your residual daily movement like walking. And walking also helps preserve your muscle, right? So it's not a workout, it's not breaking down muscle when you do it, but it's having this huge impact on your overall energy burn throughout the day. So these low impact activities help preserve your muscle tissue. They also help you burn a lot more calories at rest. This is why sedentary lifestyle is not ideal for any of us. So when we're thinking about protecting our joints, helping to support things like inflammation in the joint spaces, preserving muscle, increasing our overall daily calorie burn, things like walking are things you have control over. They're free. You can add more of them to your day, and it's just a great way to increase your overall health. Because I feel like a lot of the stuff we're talking about, what we're talking about without talking about it is like, why do people want to overtrain? It's because they're trying to lose weight a lot of the time. And a lot of that comes down to, well, how can I burn more calories? So I just want to address that, hey, a great thing to do is walk more. And it
Mhm.
also has benefit for your muscle tissue, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many things that you said there that are great, and even a lot of the people that I work with, even if they're not even focusing on weight, muscles change at perimenopause. So I even see, like, even if they're doing these big cardio days, when you specifically work on your muscles like you teach people to do, it's even more fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And
As
a
you get
lot of,
older, because when you're doing cardio, your muscles still shrink at midlife. Like, you have to intentionally focus on muscles at midlife in a way, kind of like what we were saying at the beginning. Your resilience goes down. We lose skeletal muscles.
right.
And so
We,
when you're doing the same thing through perimenopause, it's not the same.
it doesn't work the same.
It
That's
doesn't
right. That's
work the
right.
same.
So too
So
much high impact, high cardio stuff is like we were talking about, it's going to any too much of any exercise without enough recovery is going to impede your ability to preserve muscle. Because when we're doing a workout, and this is really important to understand, when you're doing a workout, you are breaking down your muscle tissue. You're not building muscle, you're not building strength. You are building strength by breaking down that muscle tissue, and then your body goes through this muscle protein synthesis activity when you are resting and refueling. So you want to be replenishing with your good carbohydrates and your protein around your workouts, right? What a lot of times you'll see happen is that our bad habits really catch up with us. So if we're skipping meals around our workouts or we're not prioritizing enough protein or carbohydrates around our workout, you're going to see a quicker muscle loss because they don't have the nutrient building blocks that help replenish that deficit where the muscle is breaking down during the workout, right? We don't, our amino acids live in our muscle tissue. We don't have a pool of amino like with acids or a reserve like we do with our carbs and our fats in our bodies. So when your body needs amino acids for muscle protein synthesis to repair, or it needs it for all of the other jobs that your body needs amino acids for, like cognitive function, your immune system, hormone and enzyme function, all these different things need amino acids. It breaks down your muscle tissue. So it to get the amino acids that are stored there, right? So you're having this like there's a constant turnover in your body of muscle protein breakdown, muscle protein synthesis. This is very natural and normal. What you don't want to have happen is too much muscle protein breakdown, so where you're always in a deficit. And in perimenopause, because of this downturn in our hormone levels, we're already having the potential for greater muscle loss. And if you're overtraining at this time, you just speed up the muscle loss process. And if you're not eating enough protein, you're speeding up the muscle loss process, right? And if you're overtraining, you're also speeding up probably fat gain because you're in this heightened cortisol state potentially, or you are just in an inflamed state and your body can't recover. And so you're just really creating this sort of internal stress that your body cannot repair from. And over time, it adds up and you see that muscle loss more and more and more, which contributes to a downturn in your metabolic function and your ability to burn body fat. Because like we talked about, more muscle you have, the more naturally and easily you're going to burn the body fat. So having more of that intentional polarization of their training would
mhm.
be more ideal, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So many good points there again. I think what you said, I really want to highlight. the stress component, how we
Yeah.
talked earlier about how we become more sensitive to elevated cortisol as our hormones change, especially as progesterone has dropped in
Yep.
perimenopause and menopause. And so, how I mean, I learned this like it was just it's so funny because I taught this for so many years, but then as I'm going through it and I, have my Aura ring and I have I
Yeah.
used a CGM for a while and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is real." So, there's something to learning the science, but then when you actually see it, it's pretty amazing.
Perimenopause isn't like an event, right? Like it's not like it just okay, now I'm in perimenopause and I'm going to do all these things differently. It creeps up. You don't realize that that's what's happening or that that's what's going on, as a result of that, you've just started to notice that things have started to not work the same, so you think I'm not doing enough, so you start doing more, and that's like the opposite of what actually helps. So you get to this point where you really need to think about how you're using your energy and how you're using your body, and actually start to take a step back and get more strategic instead of just doing more, 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 more.
Amen. Like training smarter, getting more specific about how you're moving. And I think this is exactly why I love your courses. And this is what I would love to go into next. So we know that muscle is super important for our short term health, for our long term health, and it changes at midlife. So, what do you recommend? What are like important components in perimenopause? So you've designed a new class, the perimenopause class, that I'm so excited to check out. Um, so what are the important elements in perimenopause to focus on our muscles so that we have all of those benefits?
So, new program called Perimental Fit. It's an 8-week strength training program for women in perimenopause, as you so kindly mentioned. And what I put into that is exactly what I'm going to tell you right now. You have your resistance training. So you're going to be strength training. And there's something special about that program, I guess, is one thing I want to say about training in perimenopause. You need to meet yourself where you're at. Some women out there, maybe they have not been training for some time, or they've never done like any type of real resistance training before. So we start them with body weight training, right? To help build strong form, to load the joints correctly. Then we move up to adding some weighted objects in, like dumbbells, right? Stretchy bands, that kind of stuff. So in Perimental Fit, you've got a dedicated body weight video, you've got a dedicated home workout equipment video, and you've got dedicated gym workout equipment video, things like barbells and weight plates. Because this is the thing. you you're not going to get the same result and the same stimulus for your body to adapt from if you're just doing like 20 reps every time, or if you're just doing sort of like, if I tell you to do bicep curls and you're like, okay, it says to do 15, so I'm just going to pick this 10-pound weight and I'm just going to do 15 reps. This is the time where you actually want to start to get more specific about how heavy you're going, so that your body has to adapt to the stimulus, right? So usually I start out people who are intermediate in an 8 to 12 rep range till they get comfortable with, okay, I definitely notice I'm hitting the top of that 12 rep range and I can't do any more. So now I'm going to add more resistance, and I'm going to be now closer to 10 reps with this move. And I work them down into lower rep ranges as they develop strength and confidence. And we work towards maybe a 6 to 8 rep range next, and maybe a 4 to 6 rep range as we build our strength, get more comfortable with heavier equipment. This doesn't mean that everybody has to be getting to the gym or using, barbells and stuff, but it does mean that you want to really think about what challenges you, and not just go through the motions, right? Because you really want to give your body that true stimulus. That is what is going to get those muscle adaptations to happen, especially as we start to lose that anabolic estrogen that used to help support that process. Progesterone is also really important for supporting bone remodeling. Resistance training is going to help you with your bone density and also help you with holding on to your muscle tissue. So that is a really important component of your exercise programming in perimenopause, is the resistance training piece, right? But it's not enough by itself. We have to also recover effectively after we train. So Perimental Fit gives you like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, like, training schedule where you can push yourself with those resistance training workouts. I also put a bonus alternative calendar into Perimental Fit for women who maybe would like to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off, Thursday, Friday, right? So we could have 2 days on, 1 day off, and then a couple days of recovery in the mix. That's another great training split that works really well for perimenopause. But with the caveat to something that you pointed out earlier, it's like you're doing different things. You're not training the same muscle groups on back-to-back days, and you're taking real recovery afterwards. The other piece that I would add to this is the explosive cardio. So that's going to be really helpful for loading your joints. It also helps stimulate your muscle tissue. Um, and it's short, right? So where you're doing an like 30 to 45-minute cardio session in monodirectional movement plane of running, 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 nailing those knees, nailing those feet and ankles, like in your hips and all that. Yeah, you're going the same monodirectional. You're doing the same thing nonstop. This takes that, condenses it, gives you everything in a short amount of time. And it's also really stimulating for your system, right? So it's great for getting that efficient session, for loading the joints, for all of that. But some people, especially older women, I find if they haven't been doing much cardio beforehand, are a little anxious about doing explosive cardio that's loading their joints, that's maybe like high impact. So there are a lot of other alternative lower impact moves that are still cardiovascular in nature, right? So that's all stuff that I build into my programs. I love modifications and helping you. And we also have to remember people come to things with various side dominance or past injury history and all of those types of things. And so I would say that, when you're buying or utilizing an online fitness program or even accessing somebody like me in a video that I filmed that I knew a lot of women were going to watch, if you have a specific pre-existing condition or an injury or something specific, I really encourage you, if it's possible, to work with someone who can be hands-on with you and give you some insights to help you work with your body, because you're not going to get that from a program that was created for a lot of people. You're not going to get that unless you're working hands-on with somebody. They're going to need to maybe muscle test you or assess you in some way. And with that information, you can then customize something for yourself that you found. You can use what's in it that's going to work for you. But if you feel pain or you feel tweaks or you're having issues, don't keep going with something just because you think that that's what you have to do to get the result. Always, always listen to your body first and foremost. And that brings me to my last component that I would say is really important is the stretching and the self-care. Like we talked about, like in perimenopause, this is when you're in this life stage where you are starting to lose some of that collagen, that elastin. And it is the time to really get serious about your self-care, doing your yoga. I remember I used to be like, I don't want to do yoga. I don't want to do stretching because I just want to go hard, hard, hard because I'm going to see the results the more I do. That was never actually true. The only reason I saw results is because I had higher levels of hormones. I had high resilience. I would have had much better results if I had stopped, slowed down, done my self-care more proactively, taken more rest days and not overtrained like a crazy person. Like I would have had a much better result when I was younger. I could have had a better advantageous result. So basically, we're just narrowing down the funnel. All the things that were always important, they're still important, but now they're extremely important. Like if you want the result, you have to be doing them, is the point, right? So did I tell you to do resistance training and explosive cardio when I was in my 30s? You bet I did. It was always important. It was always the way to train. Is it even more important now? You bet it is. And your recovery days are that much more important now. So is eating enough protein. And you do need to increase the amount now. So these are all the things that are in Perimental Fit, right? So this is the kind of stuff. And I talk to you about this stuff in every workout we do too, because
Yes,
it's
you
all it's
do.
about. So
Mhm.
that's what you do basically. You just get really specific about your training, your structure of your training. So I call it like your tempo, your training tempo. So the volume of your training needs to be high enough to stimulate you in the absence of your higher levels of hormones. It needs to be strategically timed so that you're not overtraining on back-to-back days, too many days in a row. You need these specific components of resistance training and explosive cardio to help stimulate your muscle tissue to respond. You need to recover, and you need the fuel and the building blocks so your body can actually repair and recover. And you may need more than this. You may need some support for your thyroid. You may need support for your hormones. You may want to look into hormone replacement therapy. Like we have all these dials that we think we're in control of. We can control diet, we can control exercise to some extent, right? We're turning those dials ourselves. We can control our sleep. We can maybe work on building stress resilience. But we can't control the fact that our bodies are aging. We can't control the fact that our hormones are fluctuating. There's a lot going on unless you're doing regular blood tests and you know exactly what the status is of your thyroid and of everything going on inside of your body. You can't know all of that. So when you're doing a training program, even if you think you're doing everything right and things aren't changing, sometimes you need to be more patient and sometimes you just need to look in deeper in your own body to see what else could possibly be going on. So,
Yeah, so
yes.
much brilliance there. Absolutely. And I just want to double click on the point that you really do teach well about reps and how to strategically and specifically train your body and know how to do that. So you've taught me so much about that. You do that. I
Good.
just want to emphasize that for everybody. Like, you don't just say this is what you do. And this is what I love and this is what I try to tell people. I don't just say do this. I teach them how to know their own body and how to do it, and that's what you do. And I love that. So I've learned so much from you. So thank you for that. And
We don't want to do stuff if we don't know why.
yeah, and if we don't know how to tap into our own body and tune
That's
in
it.
and listen to our body and listen to what other people are saying and say, "Okay, yes, and how is that interacting with my unique body and how this feels?"
Yeah,
So I
I just always assume that the woman on the other side of the camera is smart. Like she's smart like me, and she's
yeah,
going to figure stuff out if I give her the tools, right? So,
yeah. And so all the things you're doing are so helpful. I can't recommend it enough. I have noticed changes in my body and I'm actually doing less and I'm stronger. And
yeah,
I go
that's
out into
great.
the mountains and I'm not injured. I don't get sore. My shoulder doesn't hurt when I swim. Like, there's
Great.
so many short-term benefits and long-term
Yeah,
benefits to working in a smart way on our muscles, which impact everything at midlife.
so true.
So thank you for all that you do. Is there any last thing you want to say before we sign out here?
Yes. One last thing.
Yes.
I feel like midlife is this time we have to like come to terms with some things. We have to like accept that aging is a real thing. What we were just talking about with the dials, some things you have control over and some things you don't. And so like the last thing that you want to do is like beat yourself up for not looking like you did when you were 25 or like not having the same metabolism or the same hormones as you did at that different life stage or comparing yourself to other people who aren't you. you know, so I feel like there's a mental health component that is just important to mention, that it's a privilege to age, and aging well is something that we are capable of the more we know about our bodies. And there's been a lot of science in the past that was done on men's bodies, and fortunately we're now getting more science that's coming out that's been done specifically on women's bodies. So if you don't have all the answers yet, just know that maybe not all the answers have been turned over yet, and you're not alone. And it is hard to go through aging in our culture. There's a lot of pressure on us as women, but hang in there and do your best, and remember it's all or something, and just be flawsome. Don't beat yourself up for not being something else or something that you can't be. That's all.
That's all. I love it. That's
That's
such an
all.
important message. It's brilliant. Thank you for all that you do, Bree. Thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom. And everybody, you can go check out Bree, Betty Rocker, and look at her new perimenopause class. I certainly am. So thank you. That's it for this week. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a comment and a review, as that helps it reach more people. You can find me and the courses I teach, the Midlife Hormone Club and the Energy Club, online at Mountain Rebalance. I help midlife women understand their body and age better. If that sounds like you, please join my newsletter. And if there's a topic you'd like me to cover here or an expert you want me to have on, let me know. In the meantime, keep playing, and here's to aging our best.